Welcome back to Marketing Mondays Mastery. Today, we are going to take a brief but thorough dive into the latest trends shaping the travel industry in 2025. So, I think there'll be some in here that will surprise you, and others where you're like, all right, yes, that was starting to happen in 2024, and now it's just building some momentum. So, we've drawn several key insights from research that has been conducted by various travel partners, including American Express Travel, and then a few others that we've picked up along the way where they've published some 2025 reports. And so, what we're going to do is put all of that into a brief webinar here to guide you through some key trends in travel and tourism, and then include some actionable steps that'll help you get started. So, we'll discover how travel is reshaping itself into an essential part of self care, driven by the pursuit of well being, deeper connections, meaningful experiences, and then also how technology, particularly AI, is transforming the way that trips are planned. And then we'll explore the continuous rise of sustainability and rural destinations, which is great for our communities, as several of the key factors in destination choices. So let's get started. I'm PJ Wierchanski, part of the Uplift team and a full-time communication director at Appalachian State University. And I also have had the pleasure of being involved in the hospitality and tourism industry for about 20 to 25 years. So let's look at today's blueprint. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 7 of the top travel and tourism trends for 2025. So here's a sneak peek. Trend 1 is increased travel frequency. So we're going to talk a little bit about how people are wanting to travel more and that what that might mean for you. Trend 2 is budget mindfulness, and I certainly can relate to this. My family and I just took a trip to the Outer Banks, and last year was our first year going. So, of course, we wanted to go back this year. And so we decided to pick the same complex, but we were going to do a renovated unit, and it was going to be like $12 to $15 difference a night. We're like, all right, we'll do it. But come to find out, when I finally started comparing last year to this year, the cleaning fees and some of the other fees were quite a bit higher. So when I really dialed it in, it was going to be about $300 more for that extra $15 a night. So somehow all of that, you just have to watch some of that. So in my personal experience, we decided just to go back with the old unit, save some money. And so that budget mindfulness is going to continue, not just because of me, but just starting to see some trends there. Number 3 is a goal for deeper connections with travel companions. That could be your family, like in my case, or your spouse or your partner. Could be kids, especially if it's like single parents, multi-generational, personal fulfillment if you're on like a solo trip. Maybe it's like best friends, could be bros or girlfriends or whatever it might be. Another trend is sustainability in travel. That continues to be a determining factor in supporting specific destinations and businesses. Trend 5 is rural destinations that are going mainstream. We've seen this continuing to build over the last several years, and this year is just going to be probably one of the most highest desired years for rural destinations. So that's great for our uplift communities. Trend 6 is a rise in AI, artificial intelligence powered tools to plan travel. I think all of us can relate that no matter where you go, whether it's on social media, on television with commercials, or just in general in the news, AI is here and is going to be here for a while, especially as it relates to younger generations between social media and AI. The younger demographics are definitely looking at those two sources for travel inspiration. And then trend 7 is overall wellness and personal betterment. We kind of touched on that in the opening slide. And then we'll quickly go through some hot searches for 2025, maybe some things that you can incorporate into your business, and then we'll wrap it up with some key takeaways. So let's look at the first trend, and that's increased travel frequency. So despite some overall concerns and uncertainty in the financial markets, travelers are wanting to continue to travel more. So again, now we're 5 years past COVID, thank goodness, from when it started, and people are still wanting to get back what they lost. And people just love to travel, and that's continuing to be the trend. So this might mean shorter durations of travel throughout the year. According to Google, 92% of Americans plan to travel in 2025, and over half, about 56%, plan to travel more this year than last year. So again, as I mentioned, my family and I recently went to the Outer Banks, and we did 4 nights. And fortunately, I only had to take 2 days vacation time because of the weekend. And we're also planning a few more short duration trips, camping, a trip to the zoo, take our kids there. And I'll only have to take a day or two with each of those. So I don't know if any of y'all have seen some posts, and I've seen them recently where it talks about how to maximize vacation days, turn 11 PTO days into 44 vacation days. That's one specifically. And I'm going to include that link in the chat toward the end of the presentation. Now, I haven't gone through and checked all their math, but I know that there are creative ways to be able to take your paid time off and get more vacation time. So that increased travel frequency. So here's an idea. Maybe you could create something like this on your blog or your website where you highlight your destination, as well as maybe some other places along the way or nearby, and then offer 2 to 3 day itineraries just to give people ideas. And you might include various seasons so that people know they can come back more than once a year. I worked at a property a long time ago, and we were primarily summer and winter. And most of our winter guests wouldn't come in the summer. Most of our summer guests didn't come in the winter. However, we started to cross market and tell people, because they were coming out in the winter to do mostly cross country skiing or downhill skiing, to say, well, you can come back in the summertime. There's fly fishing and there's trips into Yellowstone and vice versa. So thinking about creating those itineraries for those short duration trips and then doing it seasonally so that people know they can come see you more than once a year. All right, next one, trend 2 is budget mindfulness. So 79% of Americans are budget conscious in their travel spending, and nearly 2 out of 3 plan to use either points or travel rewards to help cover those travel costs. So think about it from a traveler's perspective. If you're a destination, maybe you highlight low-cost lodging options like RV parks, campgrounds, glamping, or a special offer, stay 3, receive a free night, something like that, or a value added, and do a feature on those places that include breakfast. Again, that's something that gives that additional value, and that might highlight some of those budget-minded audience members that you've got. So another example, when my family and I travel, we look for places that are comparable in price, but include breakfast or a value added. Or maybe a place with a full kitchen. We've got a couple of kiddos, they're 7 and 9. They definitely can eat a lot these days. And so we look for places that either have one of those, either breakfast or a kitchen. A recent trip we took, we stayed in a condo. So it didn't include breakfast, but we limited our dining to just going out for like some breakfast, an occasional lunch, and then making dinner at the place. And that way we were able to still, enjoy the vacation without feeling like we're always spending a whole lot of money when we go out to eat. Plus, if you're saving money in some areas, you tend to be more likely to spend money on maybe some t-shirts or some keepsakes or something like that. All right, trend 3, traveling to forge deeper connections with travel companions. So this is huge. I know as a parent, I'm always thinking about creating memories with my kiddos and my wife. And even though I know a lot of this is for me and my wife, realistically, I know my kids aren't going to remember all of those childhood memories, but it's important to make an effort to forge those deeper connections with our travel companions. Maybe it's a spouse on a romantic getaway. Maybe we set some time aside to get off our devices and do some light, moderate, or even extreme activities. Maybe we're into wine or food or paddling or antiquing. So just making time for those things just to be able to spend time together is really important. Excuse me, because as you forge those deeper connections, that's where people really make the memories, and then they're going to want to share those and come back. So it also could be multi-generational, where you want your kids to spend quality time with the grandparents, or maybe it's a sibling or best friend. I know one of my best friends we worked at a camp together years ago, and he does a special trip with each of his kids. He's a single dad, and so every year he takes his 3 kids separately on a special trip. And he told me recently how much that means to him and to them, and that every year it's just something different and just that special time together. All right, so trend four, sustainable travel, and that's continuing to guide decision making. So, of course, we all remember 5 years ago when COVID hit, and a lot of people flocked to the rural areas to get outside, to get some fresh air. I know here in Western North Carolina, so many people clog the trails in hopes of going to those open spaces, finding a newfound love for the natural world. But unfortunately, that led to over tourism, especially in state parks and on trails and on public lands. And so people are certainly more aware of the impact that they have on visiting places. And so, as business owners or leaders of destination communities, we do have a responsibility to be mindful of travelers' interest and supporting those initiatives for sustainable travel. So, depending on your location, you could do some simple things like adding some recycling bins, make a point to use environmentally friendly packaging, in your offerings, or maybe you can support a certain percentage of net profits or net sales for some community impact or some projects or initiatives. You could also look at hiring a college intern for the summer to help create, maybe their project is to create a sustainability plan for the next few years for you. I know here at App State, where I work, our college recently awarded one of our sustainable technology professors a grant, and that's supporting her research on solar powered water filtration systems. So this was in response to Hurricane Helene, when residents in our area, after 25 inches of rain, a lot of their wells were contaminated. And so trying to come up with ways to be able to produce fresh water. All right. So trend five. This is so great. I'm so excited for this one. Rural destinations go mainstream. So many years ago, I worked at a property where visitors would come from all over to go to Yellowstone and do all these great things. But one of the questions we get asked all the time is there cell phone coverage? And it was one of those things where yes, we had it, but it wasn't always reliable and it depended on who you had. And some people were like, you know what, I'm trying to get away from it. So I'm just going to say I don't have coverage. And we're like, great, we can be your excuse. And then others that would be like, well, I have to have it. So I need to know. And we would, tell them, well, that's, up to you. But either way, we've seen a trend towards rural destinations. Part of it is just to experience life away from concrete, from noise, from cities, from that busyness. There was a recent study that determined that noise pollution can be just as impactful in a negative way on our physical and our emotional as other things. And so really being mindful of that well-being and finding places to escape, like rural communities, like all of our partners with Uplift, perfect places to go. So it's a great trend to be able to pass along. All right, number six, the rise in AI-powered tools to plan travel. So, we can expect to see technology continue to play a larger role in trip planning. Travel tech company Amadeus found that almost 50% of its customers are planning to prioritize generative AI through 2025 for travel plans. They also noted that many travel firms still don't know exactly how to use the technology to their benefit. But if you want some examples, there are some popular platforms for travelers like Perplexity, Adventure Genie, Mindtrip, and then even TripAdvisor has some AI tools for itineraries. So I thought those would be worth passing along. And then also at Hyatt, the hotel company, they use it's not all of them, but some of them use an AI powered bed, and that helps to monitor your heart rate, movement, blood pressure, to offer a more comfortable and better night's sleep. Not sure how I feel about that yet, but that's what's happening. So here's another idea. Maybe you seek out and you test some of these AI powered tools, and prompt it for something that might include you or your destination just to see what's happening. It'd be really interesting. And I'm sure these studies are going on now with how many travelers book based on AI suggestions. So, anyway, if you're in there, that could be a really good thing. All right, trend seven. This is the last one that we're going to go through is overall wellness and personal fulfillment. And I feel like, this comes and goes. I feel like, some years it's more important than others, but right now it does continue to shape how people travel this year. Something called calmcations. I'm not sure if I like that term, but vacations purely focused on creating that sense of tranquility, that continues to be popular. One idea could be to promote off-grid cabins or RV parks or glamping or tree houses if that's something that's in your area. That allows you to reconnect with nature. You could even unplug the Wi-Fi or power for specific weekends or packages that promote that disconnection. It's a sign that right now the escapism of travel includes escaping technology. I know I could use it every so often. So here's another idea that you might think about. You could create a wellness package, a wellness retreat weekend, or maybe even just some wellness gift baskets with like a local spa or something. Depending on your business, you might find ways to incorporate this into your offerings. And even just having those options will drive people to want to do more. Even if they don't book that package, they may get on site and then decide they want to add a massage, or they want to, do yoga, or they want to continue to do things, maybe even order healthy things off your menu to make sure you've got those options there. I know for me in the last year, I've tried to reduce the amount of added sugar. And so I'm always looking for options when I'm going out to eat that give me natural, like honey or maple syrup, or natural sweeteners that don't have that added sugar in it, which is really hard, by the way. And then another idea, you could offer a disconnection option or package where maybe certain areas of your property guests won't have Wi-Fi, or maybe they check in their cell phone for a couple hours, and you can encourage like certain apps for guests that want to limit their time on social media. There's one called OneSec, SEC, Screens In or Rescue Time. All of those can help you to reduce the amount of time on social media. So, and not everybody's going to do it, but it just might be an interesting option to see if you get some traction or interest from the media about it. All right, here's some hot searches for 2025. The first one is Noctourism. So think about nighttime travel experiences like bioluminescent beaches, aurora watching. This year, solar activity is going to be at some of the highest. And last year was good too. This picture actually I took here in Boone in October. I had never seen the Northern Lights. Even 20 years living out in Montana, we never saw them. But twice in 2024 in Boone, we had some solar activity. So this was a photo I took this past year. And even though that's a hard thing to promote, sometimes even just the possibility of seeing it is kind of cool and gets a lot of attention. So Noctourism really interacts with what's always been really kind of a key tenet in the travel industry, and that's fostering connections with the wider world. Another one is Off the Beaten Path or Hidden Gems or lesser known destinations. People really want to immerse themselves in an unpredictable experience. They want to look for authentic places to eat, hole in the wall diners. That's one of my favorites. Coffee shops, local museums, nostalgic theaters, hand me down stores, classic bookshops, and more. And then finally, sustainable travel is going to be another hot search. As we mentioned in Trend 4, people are looking for ways to travel while being mindful of the importance of sustainability. So whether it's hitting the trails, supporting local businesses, travelers don't necessarily want to negatively impact the environment, and they want to avoid the over tourism or popular places, where everybody else has already been hiking. People want to go somewhere else. So lesser developed, and they want to be able to have something that's pure and enjoyable. All right, so as we wrap things up, here's a couple of real life examples of some of these off the beaten path places in rural areas. In Burnsville, North Carolina is the Bear Dark Sky Observatory. And so they do special evening programs, especially on clear nights. They do school groups. They do some really cool, it's one of the largest dark sky observatories in North Carolina. Another one is candle concerts. And I wanted to put this one in there as one of the hot searches, but it didn't meet the criteria. But it's something that I'm seeing definitely rise. And if you just Google that, you'll see some really cool photos. And basically, it's a concert in the dark with just candles everywhere. And it's absolutely beautiful. Now, because it's still rising in popularity, a lot of the places that I see offering it are the bigger cities, but I did find a few of the smaller towns like Greenville and Asheville, which I know are still pretty big, were offering upcoming candlelight concerts. So that might be kind of cool if you're in a position to offer something like that. And then on our recent trip to the Outer Banks, we found this coffee shop just by chance called Chara's Coffee Shop. And one of the things that helps them stand out, and again, this is just an example, is they have this prayer wall where everybody has written prayers on a sticky note, and it literally covers this like 12-foot high wall by probably 20-foot wide. And just, I got my coffee, which of course was amazing. And I'm sitting there, and we're all, my kids, my wife, we're all reading everybody's prayers. And it's just one of those things where to me, I found it fascinating. I'm not saying everybody has to do it, but it just was one of those places that was so unique and really moved me. And it's something I will remember forever. And I think we all will in our family. So just some kind of cool places. And then this one I just had to throw in there because this isn't too far from me, maybe an hour away, called Dead People Stuff. And of course, it's, items that were sold at an estate sale. It's an emporium, an antique store, and they just have a lot of like funky things, and so it's gained some attention, probably because of the name, but also just because of the unique items that they have there. So wanted to share some real life examples from rural towns in North Carolina. All right, so our key takeaways, the travel trends for 2025 is to, think about offering shorter, more frequent travel options. Now, if your average nightly stay is only 1 or 2 nights, then don't change anything. Obviously, you want to continue doing what you're doing, but you could highlight some shorter itineraries, things like that, to get people thinking about coming to stay at your destination or do business with you if they're just doing like a short weekend trip. Be mindful of your audience. Now, if you're not a budget friendly and you're higher end, I think that's perfectly fine. Maybe focus more on the value added, because really most levels, whether it's low, middle, or upper, are more budget conscious this year. There's some uncertainty, so be sure to provide either budget friendly options or value added. Also, create opportunities for deeper connections. So, whatever that might mean to your business, and I'm more than happy to set up a time one on one to do some brainstorming, because that could be very different and hard to really materialize or pinpoint. But if you've got opportunities to do something that encourages that togetherness with whoever the travel companions are. I know, again, for my kiddos, if it's just a place where we feel like we can connect as a family without external forces of other people or traffic or noise or whatever it might be, that gives us an opportunity just to spend time together. And then promoting sustainable practices. It doesn't have to be in people's faces, because most people aren't necessarily going to say, I'm only going to places that do this, but it's that appreciation for trying to do what's sustainable or regenerative. And then finally, highlight unique experiences. Again, that is going to continue to be a trend. People don't want to go where everybody else has gone necessarily, and those rural destinations continue to be popular. And so anything that you can do to highlight those or those opportunities for you or your destination is really going to be what people want to get into this year. All right, so next Monday, Hessa and myself and several members of the Uplift team, and hopefully y'all or some of our Uplift communities, will be at the Visit NC annual conference in Hickory. If you are, we'll be excited to see you there. So we're going to take next Monday off, and then on the 14th, we're going to bring back a recap of the conference to share with those that couldn't make it. And maybe even if you did, but you missed a couple of the mini sessions, we'll have a quick recap on the conference to be able to share with you. So if there's any questions, I will certainly stick around to answer those.